The rain hammered against the windows of Montgomery Financial Group's headquarters as Jennifer Hayes gathered her belongings, her mind already racing through the evening's logistics. Pick up 6-year-old Tyler from after-school care, stop at the grocery store, help with homework, prepare dinner, give him a bath, read bedtime stories. The mental checklist never ended for a single mother working as an executive assistant in one of Boston's most prestigious investment firms. She rushed toward the elevator, her worn leather bag slung over her shoulder. Already 10 minutes behind schedule. The daycare charged $5 for every minute past 6 o'clock, and Jennifer couldn't afford another late fee this month. Medical bills from Tyler's asthma medication had already stretched her budget to its absolute limit. It wasn't until she was halfway home, stuck in Friday evening traffic on the Mass Pike, that her heart sank. Her laptop, the silver MacBook that contained the presentation she'd spent 3 weeks perfecting for Monday's crucial client meeting, sat on her desk on the 42nd floor. Jennifer's hands tightened on the steering wheel of her 12-year-old Honda Civic as panic flooded through her. She couldn't go back. The daycare closed at 6:30 sharp, and it was already 6:15. But that presentation represented months of work, countless late nights after Tyler fell asleep. Every ounce of effort she'd poured into proving herself worthy of the senior assistant position she desperately needed. The promotion would mean a $20,000 raise. Enough to move out of their cramped one-bedroom apartment in Dorchester, enough to afford better health care for Tyler, enough to finally breathe. Jennifer's phone buzzed. Another text from Melissa at Little Scholars Daycare. "Running late?" "5 minutes away," Jennifer typed back quickly at a red light, her stomach churning with anxiety. She made it to the daycare at 6:28, sprinting from the parking lot despite the pouring rain. Tyler sat in the corner of the lobby, his small backpack beside him, drawing pictures with the patience of a child who had learned too young that his mother always came, just sometimes a little late. "Mama!" His face lit up when he saw her, and Jennifer's heart simultaneously soared and broke. He deserved so much more than what she could give him. "Hey, buddy," she said, kneeling down to hug him tightly, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo. "How was your day?" "I made you a picture." Tyler held up a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, holding hands under a rainbow. "That's you and me when we go to the beach someday." Jennifer blinked back tears. They'd never been to the beach. She couldn't afford a vacation, couldn't afford the time off work. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. I'll hang it on the fridge the second we get home." The evening unfolded in its usual chaotic rhythm. Chicken nuggets and steamed broccoli for dinner because it was fast and Tyler would actually eat it. Homework at the kitchen table while Jennifer tried not to think about her abandoned laptop. Bath time with too much splashing and Tyler's infectious laughter. 2 chapters of their current book, a story about a brave knight and a friendly dragon. By 8:30, Tyler was finally asleep, his small chest rising and falling peacefully. Jennifer stood in the doorway of their shared bedroom. He had the twin bed, she had a mattress on the floor, and allowed herself a moment of pure worry. Monday's presentation was critical. Her boss, Mr. Montgomery, had specifically requested that she lead the client pitch. It was a test, she knew, to see if she could handle the responsibilities of the senior position. Without her laptop, she had nothing. The presentation wasn't backed up to the cloud. She'd been meaning to set that up, but had never found the time. She could go back to the office early Monday morning, but the client meeting was scheduled for 8:30. She'd never make it. Jennifer collapsed onto the sagging couch in their tiny living room, exhaustion and desperation washing over her. She'd worked so hard to get here. After Tyler's father abandoned them 2 weeks before the birth, Jennifer had clawed her way through every obstacle. She'd finished her business degree online while working full-time and caring for a newborn. She'd taken every extra shift, learned every skill, proved herself indispensable. And now it might all fall apart because she'd forgotten her laptop. The knock on her apartment door at 9:15 made her jump. Jennifer froze, her heart pounding. Nobody visited. She had no family in Boston, few friends with time for a struggling single mother. Another knock, firmer this time. She approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole, her breath caught in her throat. Standing in the dim hallway of her run-down apartment building, rain dripping from his expensive charcoal suit, was Christopher Montgomery. The Christopher Montgomery, billionaire CEO of Montgomery Financial Group, her boss's boss's boss, the man whose face graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune, who owned 3 homes and a yacht, who moved in circles so far removed from her reality, they might as well be different planets. And he was holding her laptop. Jennifer's hands trembled as she unlocked the door, acutely aware of her faded yoga pants and oversized MIT sweatshirt, a relic from her scholarship days. She opened the door a crack, confusion and mortification flooding through her in equal measure. "Mr. Montgomery?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Christopher Montgomery was taller than he appeared in photographs, with dark hair silvered at the temples and eyes the color of steel. At 42, he was devastating in the way that powerful, intelligent men often were. But it was the unexpected gentleness in his expression that shocked her most. "Ms. Hayes," he said, his voice deep and warm despite the rain-soaked chill, "I believe you forgot something important." Jennifer stared at the laptop in his hands as if it were a hallucination. How did you... I was working late when I noticed it on your desk. I remembered you mentioning the presentation during this week's executive briefing." He paused, his gaze flickering past her into the small apartment. "I thought you might need it over the weekend." 1,000 questions raced through Jennifer's mind, but the most pressing one escaped before she could stop it. "You know where I live?" Something flickered in Christopher's eyes. "HR records. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to ensure you had everything you needed for Monday." Jennifer reached for the laptop with shaking hands, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. An electric current seemed to pass between them, unexpected and startling. She pulled back quickly, clutching the computer to her chest like a lifeline. "Thank you," she managed. "I can't tell you what this means." "The presentation is excellent work," Christopher interrupted. "I reviewed it this afternoon. Your analysis of the European market trends was particularly insightful." Jennifer's cheeks flushed. The CEO had read her work, actually looked at the research she'd compiled. "Mama?" Tyler's sleepy voice called from the bedroom. "Who's there?" Jennifer's eyes widened in panic. "I'm sorry. I need to..." "Of course," Christopher said quickly, already stepping back. But his gaze had shifted, something unreadable crossing his features. "Your son?" "Yes. He had a nightmare last week, so he's been..." Jennifer trailed off, unsure why she was explaining her life to this man. "Thank you again, Mr. Montgomery. This was incredibly kind." Christopher Montgomery looked at her for a long moment, and Jennifer could have sworn she saw something like loneliness in those steel-gray eyes. Then he nodded once, professional mask sliding back into place. "Have a good weekend, Mrs. Hayes. I'll see you Monday morning." Jennifer closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. She could hear his footsteps retreating down the hallway, expensive shoes on worn linoleum. Through the thin walls, she heard a car engine start, undoubtedly something German and worth more than she'd earn in 5 years. Christopher Montgomery had delivered her laptop personally. The Billionaire CEO had driven across the city in the rain to bring her laptop to her apartment in Dorchester. Nothing about that made sense. The weekend passed in a blur of presentation rehearsals and mounting questions Jennifer couldn't answer. Why had Christopher Montgomery really driven across Boston to deliver her laptop? HR records didn't include home addresses. She'd filled out those forms herself, listing only an emergency contact number, and he'd reviewed her presentation personally? The CEO of a multi-billion-dollar investment firm had taken time to read work prepared by an executive assistant. Sunday evening, after Tyler was asleep, Jennifer stood at her bathroom mirror, practicing her pitch for the 100th time. Dark circles shadowed her eyes despite the concealer she'd carefully applied. Her best suit, a navy blazer and pencil skirt purchased at a consignment shop, hung on the back of the door, freshly pressed and ready for tomorrow's make-or-break meeting. She thought about Christopher Montgomery's expression when Tyler had called out. Something had shifted in those steel-gray eyes, a vulnerability she hadn't expected from a man whose reputation was built on ruthless business acumen and ice-cold negotiations. Forbes had called him the Shark of Wall Street. Business Insider had written an exposé on his seemingly perfect life. Self-made billionaire, philanthropist, eligible bachelor, constantly photographed with models and actresses. Yet he'd stood in her shabby hallway looking almost human. Monday morning arrived with mechanical precision. Jennifer dropped Tyler at daycare by 7:15, made it to the office by 7:45, and was setting up the conference room when her direct supervisor, Patricia Wu, swept in with her usual air of controlled chaos. "The Henderson Group representatives just arrived early," Patricia announced, her voice tight with stress. "They're already in the executive lounge. Mr. Montgomery wants to begin in 10 minutes instead of 30. Jennifer's stomach dropped, but she nodded calmly. I'm ready. You'd better be, Patricia said, though her tone wasn't unkind. This is a $40 million account. The senior assistant position depends on landing it. The next 2 hours unfolded like a fever dream. Jennifer delivered her presentation flawlessly, fielding questions about market volatility and investment strategies with the confidence born from weeks of meticulous research. The Henderson Group representatives, 3 stern men in their 60s, nodded approvingly throughout. But it was Christopher Montgomery's presence that unnerved her. He sat at the head of the table, saying little, his gaze fixed on her, with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. Every time their eyes met, that same electric current from Friday night sparked between them. When the meeting concluded with handshakes and promises to sign contracts by end of week, Patricia actually smiled, a rare occurrence. Excellent work, Jennifer. Truly exceptional. Thank you, Jennifer said, already gathering her materials, eager to escape Christopher's scrutiny. Ms. Hayes, a moment? His voice stopped her at the door. Patricia left with a knowing look that made Jennifer's cheeks burn. She turned slowly to face Christopher Montgomery, alone in the conference room with him for the first time since that strange encounter at her apartment. Sir? He stood, moving around the table with the casual grace of someone utterly comfortable in his own skin. That was impressive. You have a natural talent for reading clients and adapting your approach. Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Jennifer kept her voice professionally neutral, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Christopher, he said quietly, when it's just us, please call me Christopher. Jennifer's eyes widened. I don't think that would be appropriate? A slight smile tugged at his lips. Probably not, but I'm tired of formality. Before she could respond, he continued, his expression growing serious. I wanted to apologize for showing up at your home unannounced. It was presumptuous. You saved my career, Jennifer said honestly. Without that laptop, I couldn't have prepared properly. I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. Christopher's voice was firm. Your work speaks for itself. I simply returned your property. At 9 o'clock on a Friday night, in the rain, to Dorchester. Jennifer found unexpected courage in her confusion. Billionaire CEOs don't typically make personal deliveries. Something flickered in Christopher's eyes. That same vulnerability she'd glimpsed Friday night. Maybe this particular CEO had his reasons. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Jennifer knew she should leave, should maintain professional distance, should not engage in whatever this was. But she heard herself asking, what reasons? Christopher was quiet for a long moment, studying her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Your son, he said finally. How old is he? The question caught her off guard. Tyler's 6. Why? I heard him call for you. Through the door. Christopher's hands slid into his pockets, his posture less commanding now, almost uncertain. It reminded me of someone. Jennifer waited, sensing he needed to continue. I had a son once, Christopher said quietly, the words seeming to cost him something. Daniel. He would have been 7 this year. The past tense hit Jennifer like a physical blow. Mr. Montgomery, He died when he was 3. Leukemia. Christopher's voice remained steady, but Jennifer saw the grief etched in the lines around his eyes. My wife. Ex-wife. And I divorced 6 months after we buried him. Some marriages don't survive that kind of loss. Jennifer's throat tightened with sympathy. She thought about Tyler, about the terror she felt every time he had an asthma attack, about the nightmares of something happening to him. She couldn't imagine actually living through that loss. I'm sorry, she whispered. I can't imagine. No one can. Until they do. Christopher's gaze met hers, raw and honest. I saw your presentation file name when I found the laptop, Tyler's Future Fund. You named it after your son. Jennifer flushed. She hadn't realized anyone would see that detail. The promotion, the raise, it's for him, to give him opportunities I never had. You went to MIT, Christopher said. Full scholarship according to your resume. That's not exactly lacking opportunity. I grew up in foster care, Jennifer said, before she could stop herself. She never talked about her past, never gave people reasons to pity her. But something about Christopher's openness demanded honesty in return. 12 different homes between ages 4 and 18. MIT was my escape route, but I still worked 3 jobs to cover expenses the scholarship didn't. Tyler's father left before he was born. I've been doing this alone for 6 years. Christopher's expression softened with something that looked like admiration. You're remarkable. I'm a survivor, Jennifer corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Christopher moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtly masculine. I think remarkable people often don't recognize their own strength. Jennifer's breath caught. This was dangerous territory. He was her boss. Billionaires didn't pursue single mothers from Dorchester. This was fantasy, not reality. I should go, she said, taking a step backward. Tyler's daycare. Has you scheduled to pick him up at 6, I imagine? Christopher's lips curved slightly. It's barely noon, Jennifer. The sound of her first name and his voice sent shivers down her spine. Mr. Montgomery, have lunch with me. The invitation hung in the air between them, impossible and tempting. Jennifer shook her head. I can't. People would talk. It would be complicated. Christopher finished. I know. But I find myself not caring about complications for the first time in 4 years. Jennifer's mind raced. This was insane. CEOs didn't date their assistants. Billionaires didn't fall for single mothers struggling to make rent. These stories didn't happen in real life. But the way Christopher looked at her, like she was someone worth seeing, worth knowing, made her want to believe in impossible things. One lunch, he said quietly. Off-site. Completely private. Just 2 people having a conversation. Why? Jennifer needed to understand. Why me? Christopher considered the question carefully. Because when you opened your door Friday night, you didn't see my money or my reputation or my company. You saw a man bringing you something you needed. And when your son called for you, you didn't try to impress me or extend the conversation. You did what any good mother would do. You protected him and prioritized his needs. He paused. In my world, Jennifer, genuine people are rarer than you might think. Jennifer agreed to lunch, though every rational part of her brain screamed that she was making a catastrophic mistake. They went to a small Italian restaurant in the North End, far from the financial district where Christopher might be recognized. He drove them in a deliberately understated black sedan, still expensive, but not the attention-grabbing sports car she'd expected. Over pasta and red wine that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget, they talked. Really talked. In a way Jennifer hadn't experienced since before Tyler was born. Christopher asked about her childhood, her education, her dreams for Tyler's future. He listened with genuine interest, not the polite attention people usually offered before changing the subject. In return, he told her about Daniel, about the little boy who'd loved dinosaurs and refused to eat anything green, about the 18 months of treatments and hospital stays and desperate prayers, about the moment he'd held his son's hand and felt it go still. I threw myself into work afterward, Christopher admitted, swirling wine in his glass. 14, 16-hour days. Anything to avoid going home to an empty house. My marriage was already over. We just made it official. I told myself I was fine, that success was enough. But it wasn't, Jennifer said softly. No. Christopher met her gaze. I've spent 4 years building an empire and feeling nothing. And then I saw your laptop on that desk Friday afternoon, and I thought about you rushing home to your son, about the panic you'd feel realizing you'd forgotten it. Something shifted. I wanted to help. Not because it was the right corporate move, but because I wanted to see you relieved instead of worried. Jennifer's heart raced. Christopher, I need to be honest with you. I can't afford complications. Tyler is my priority. I need this job, need the promotion. If people at the office found out about this. They won't, Christopher said firmly. I'll make sure of it. But Jennifer, I'm not asking you to choose between your son and whatever this might become. I would never ask that. Then what are you asking? Christopher reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. For a chance. To see if what I felt Friday night was real. To know if you felt it too. Jennifer's throat tightened. She had felt it. That inexplicable pull, that sense of recognition. But she'd learned long ago that fairy tales didn't come true for foster kids turned single mothers. Men like Christopher Montgomery didn't rescue women like her. I felt it, she admitted quietly, but I'm terrified of what it means. The weeks that followed were a study in secrecy and stolen moments. Christopher took Jennifer to dinner at restaurants outside Boston, to quiet museums after hours, to a private beach on Cape Cod where Tyler built sandcastles, while Christopher taught him about tides and marine life. He never pushed for more than Jennifer was ready to give, never made her feel like she owed him anything. At work, they maintained perfect professionalism. Jennifer received her promotion, senior executive assistant with the promised raise, based entirely on merit. Christopher ensured the decision came through Patricia and the HR department, with no hint of favoritism. Jennifer moved Tyler into a better apartment in Cambridge, close to good schools, and with his own bedroom finally, but privately, Jennifer was falling in love. It terrified her. Christopher was nothing like she'd expected. He was patient with Tyler, genuinely interested in a 6-year-old's rambling stories about school and Pokemon cards. He was thoughtful, remembering that Jennifer preferred tea to coffee and that Tyler was allergic to peanuts. He was vulnerable in ways that broke her heart, talking about his son and the guilt he still carried. 3 months into their secret relationship, everything changed. Jennifer was working late, helping Christopher prepare for a major acquisition, when Patricia knocked on his office door. Her face was pale, expression strained. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you, Christopher. She says it's urgent." Christopher frowned. "I don't have any appointments." A woman appeared behind Patricia, and Jennifer's blood ran cold. She was stunning, tall, blonde, impeccably dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than Jennifer's monthly rent. But it was the desperate hope in her eyes that made Jennifer's stomach drop. "Chris," the woman said, her voice shaking. "I need to talk to you." "It's about Daniel." Christopher stood so abruptly his chair rolled backward. "Victoria, what are you—" "I know this is impossible," Victoria interrupted, tears streaming down her perfect face. "But I saw him. Chris, I saw our son. He's alive." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Jennifer watched Christopher's face drain of color, watched him grip the edge of his desk as if the world had tilted sideways. "That's not possible," he said hoarsely. "Daniel died. We buried him." "I thought so too," Victoria sobbed. "But I saw him at a clinic in Cambridge 2 days ago. Same birthmark on his left shoulder, same cowlick, same everything. He's 7 years old, Chris, exactly the age Daniel would be." Jennifer's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. Children didn't come back from the dead. But Victoria's anguish was genuine, and Christopher looked like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart. "Where?" Christopher demanded. "What clinic?" Victoria named a children's medical facility Jennifer recognized. It was 3 blocks from her new apartment, where she'd taken Tyler for his last asthma checkup. "I followed them," Victoria continued. "The boy and his mother. They got into a car, but I got the license plate. Chris, I hired a private investigator. The boy's name is Lucas. Lucas Brennan. He's been living with a couple who adopted him as an infant." Christopher swayed on his feet. Jennifer moved instinctively to steady him, but he didn't seem to notice her touch. "An infant?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Victoria. Daniel was 3 when he was supposedly buried," Victoria finished. "But what if something happened at the hospital? What if there was a mistake, or worse? What if someone took him?" The implications were staggering and horrifying. Jennifer thought about the medical system, about the chaos of terminal illness wards, about the possibility of unthinkable errors or crimes. "I need proof," Christopher said, his voice hardening into the tone Jennifer recognized from board meetings. "DNA tests, medical records, something concrete." "The investigator is working on it," Victoria said. "But Chris, I know my son. I carried him for 9 months. I knew every inch of him. That boy is Daniel." Jennifer watched Christopher's world crumble in real time. She saw the hope warring with terror in his eyes, saw the 4 years of carefully constructed grief threatened by the possibility that his son might be alive, stolen, living with strangers. "I should go," Jennifer said quietly, gathering her things. Christopher's eyes snapped to her, as if he'd forgotten she was there. For a moment, she saw confusion in his gaze, as if he couldn't quite place her in the context of this nightmare. "Jennifer, You need time with Victoria to process this, Jennifer said, her heart breaking even as she kept her voice steady. I'll reschedule your morning meetings. She left before he could respond, before Victoria could ask who she was, before the tears burning behind her eyes could fall. In the elevator, Jennifer let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened. Christopher's son might be alive. His ex-wife, the mother of his child, had just reappeared with impossible hope. Whatever had been building between Jennifer and Christopher over the past 3 months couldn't possibly survive this. She'd been a fool to believe in fairy tales. Her phone buzzed with a text from Christopher. Please don't disappear. I need you. But Jennifer knew better. He needed Victoria now. He needed to find out if his son was alive. He needed his old life back, or at least the possibility of it. Jennifer had always been good at survival. She'd survived foster care, poverty, abandonment, and single motherhood. She could survive losing Christopher Montgomery, too. She picked up Tyler from his after-school program, held him close in the car, and reminded herself that she'd built a good life for them before Christopher appeared. She could do it again. But that night, alone on her new apartment's small balcony after Tyler fell asleep, Jennifer let herself cry for the first time in years, not just for Christopher, but for the brief, beautiful moment when she'd allowed herself to believe that someone might choose her, might stay, might build a future with her and Tyler. The next morning, Christopher's office was empty. His assistant, not Patricia, but someone from the executive floor, informed Jennifer that Mr. Montgomery had taken personal leave for family matters. No timeline for return. Jennifer buried herself in work, maintained her professional demeanor, and ignored the pitying looks from colleagues who'd somehow learned that the CEO had abruptly disappeared. Rumors swirled through Montgomery Financial Group like wildfire. Everything from a secret illness to a corporate scandal. Only Jennifer knew the truth, and she kept it locked inside, where all her other survival skills lived. 2 weeks passed with no word from Christopher. Jennifer threw herself into work with mechanical precision, arriving early and staying late, volunteering for every project Patricia assigned. At home, she was present for Tyler, helping with homework, playing board games, reading bedtime stories, but part of her remained hollow, waiting for news that never came. She told herself she was being ridiculous. Christopher owed her nothing. Their relationship had been brief, secret, and entirely secondary to the possibility that his son might be alive. Of course he'd chosen to focus on that. Any parent would. Still, the silence hurt more than she wanted to admit. On a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after Victoria's devastating revelation, Jennifer was leaving the office when she found Christopher waiting by her car in the parking garage. He looked different. Thinner, exhausted, with shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights, but there was something else in his expression too. Something that looked like peace. Christopher, Jennifer breathed, her heart lurching. What? He's not Daniel, Christopher said quietly. The boy Victoria saw, Lucas Brennan. We did the DNA test. He's not my son. Jennifer's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Christopher shook his head slowly. Don't be. The test results were devastating, yes, but they also gave me something I didn't realize I needed. Closure. Real, definitive closure. He moved closer, and Jennifer could see the truth in his eyes. He'd been grieving, yes, but he'd also been processing, accepting, letting go in a way he perhaps never had before. Victoria and I talked, really talked, for the first time since the divorce. We both realized we'd been holding on to hope that our son might somehow come back, that the nightmare might be reversible. Seeing Lucas forced us to confront Daniel's death in a way we'd avoided. Christopher's voice cracked slightly. My son is gone. He's been gone for 4 years. And I need to honor his memory by actually living again, not just existing. Tears streamed down Jennifer's face. I'm glad you have closure. You deserve peace. I disappeared on you, Christopher said, guilt heavy in his voice. I left without explanation, without even a proper conversation. Victoria showed up and I just collapsed inward. I'm sorry, Jennifer. You deserved better. You were dealing with an impossible situation, Jennifer said, though the words hurt to speak. Your ex-wife. The possibility of your son being alive. Of course, that took priority. I understood. Did you? Christopher stepped closer, his hand reaching up to cup her cheek. Because I spent 3 weeks thinking about what matters, about what I want my life to look like. And every single scenario included you and Tyler. Jennifer's breath caught. Christopher. I love you, he said simply. I'm in love with you, Jennifer Hayes. With your strength and your devotion to your son, and the way you make me want to be better than I am. I know it's complicated. I know people will talk about the CEO dating his employee. I know you're terrified of depending on anyone. But I'm asking you to take a chance on us anyway. Jennifer's mind raced with 1,000 objections. The power imbalance, the office politics, the risk of everything falling apart and losing not just Christopher, but her job, her stability, Tyler's security. But she thought about the past 3 months, about Christopher playing in the sand with Tyler, about quiet dinners where they talked for hours, about feeling seen and valued for the first time in her adult life. She thought about Tyler asking when Mr. Chris would visit again, about how her son had started sleeping better, laughing more, blossoming under the attention of a kind male figure, and she thought about what Christopher had said about actually living instead of just surviving. I love you too, Jennifer whispered. I've been terrified to admit it, but I do. Christopher's entire face transformed with relief and joy. He pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both were crying and laughing simultaneously. So what now? Jennifer asked. You're still my boss. I still need this job. You're being transferred, Christopher said, a slight smile playing at his lips. Patricia has been promoted to VP of Operations. You're being moved to a new position, Director of Strategic Planning, reporting directly to the CFO instead of to me. Same floor, better office, $30,000 raise. The board approved it this afternoon. Jennifer's eyes widened. You can't just... I didn't. Christopher interrupted. Patricia recommended you based on your work over the past 6 months. The CFO interviewed you last month for a different project, remember? He specifically requested you for his team. I recused myself from the decision entirely. This is your merit, Jennifer. Your talent. I just made sure the process happened quickly so we could move forward. Jennifer's heart swelled. He'd thought of everything. Protecting her career, eliminating the ethical concerns, ensuring she maintained her independence. There's something else, Christopher said, his voice turning nervous in a way she'd never heard before. I want to meet Tyler, officially. Not as your boss who happens to visit sometimes, but as the man who's in love with his mother and wants to be part of both your lives. He asks about you constantly, Jennifer admitted. I think he's a little bit in love with you too. Then let's do this right, Christopher said. Slow, careful, making sure Tyler's comfortable every step of the way. I'm not trying to replace his father or rush into anything. I just want a chance to show you both that I'm serious about this. 6 months later, Jennifer stood in Christopher's Beacon Hill townhouse, their townhouse now, though she still marveled at the improbability of it, watching through the window as Christopher taught Tyler to ride a bicycle in the private garden. Her son's laughter echoed off the brick walls, pure and joyful. The transition hadn't been easy. Office gossip had been intense until Jennifer's transfer became official, and her professional competence spoke for itself. Christopher's social circle had been skeptical at first, uncertain how to receive a single mother from Dorchester. Victoria had been surprisingly gracious, even sending Jennifer a note thanking her for helping Christopher heal, but they'd navigated every obstacle together. Christopher had insisted on family therapy to ensure Tyler adjusted healthily to their relationship. Jennifer had maintained her financial independence, keeping her own bank account and contributing to household expenses despite Christopher's protests. They'd established boundaries, built trust, and created a life that honored both Jennifer's need for autonomy and their love for each other. Mama, look! Tyler shouted as he pedaled successfully for 10 feet before wobbling. Christopher caught him before he could fall, both of them laughing. Jennifer's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Board meeting went perfectly. That European expansion proposal you drafted was brilliant. Drinks Friday to celebrate your brilliance? Jennifer smiled. Her career had flourished under the CFO's mentorship. She'd discovered a talent for strategic planning that she'd never had the opportunity to explore before. Last month, she'd been invited to speak at a Women in Finance conference about career advancement for single mothers. Christopher and Tyler came inside, both flushed and happy. Christopher wrapped his arms around Jennifer from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. I have something to ask you both, he said quietly. Tyler looked up with curious eyes. Christopher pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a stunning but tasteful diamond ring. Jennifer Hayes, you've taught me that life continues after loss, that love can be found in unexpected places, and that family is built, not born. Will you marry me? Jennifer's hands trembled as she looked at the ring, at Christopher's hopeful face, at Tyler bouncing excitedly beside them. Say yes, Mama, Tyler urged. Then Mr. Chris can be my real dad. Jennifer laughed through her tears. Yes, of course, yes. Christopher slipped the ring onto her finger, then lifted Tyler up so all three of them could embrace. In that moment, surrounded by the two people who'd become her entire world, Jennifer felt something she'd searched for her whole life finally settle into place. She'd spent her childhood in foster care, convinced she didn't deserve permanence. She'd spent years as a single mother, certain she had to do everything alone. She'd almost walked away from Christopher, terrified to believe in happy endings. But sometimes, Jennifer realized, fairy tales did come true, not because a billionaire rescued a struggling single mother, but because two broken people found the courage to heal together. Because love meant showing up, even when it was complicated, because family meant choosing each other, every single day. 3 months later, they married in a small ceremony overlooking the ocean, the same beach where Christopher had first built sandcastles with Tyler. Victoria attended, bringing Daniel's favorite toy dinosaur as a wedding gift, a gesture of blessing that made both Christopher and Jennifer cry. Tyler served as ring bearer, proudly announcing to anyone who would listen that he was getting the best dad ever. Christopher legally adopted him 6 months after the wedding, and Tyler Brennan Hayes Montgomery declared it the best day of his life. Jennifer never forgot her laptop that day at Montgomery Financial Group, but she remained forever grateful that she had, because that single moment of forgetfulness had led to everything that mattered: love, family, and the radical notion that she deserved both. As she stood in her new home office years later, now VP of Strategic Development, watching Christopher teach their daughter, Caroline, named after his mother, to walk in the garden while Tyler practiced piano in the living room, Jennifer understood something profound. She hadn't needed rescuing. She'd needed someone who saw her strength and loved her for it, someone who understood that the best relationships were built by two whole people choosing to become better together. And that, she thought, as Christopher looked up and smiled at her through the window, was the real fairy tale all along.